Good evening.
Welcome to LEC Update, the show you never thought you needed, and once you've seen it, you'll know for sure.
I'm Ify de Portere.
And I'm Christy Frierson. Last week in Athens, the LEC hosted what was possibly the greatest European series of all time. I am, of course, referring to Fnatic versus Sjokz. Honestly, though, I'm expecting to see Sjokz rebrand to Sjokz Null Drive for 2020. Now, all of our teams had booths at the venue in Athens. Misfits hosted a silent disco to keep in theme with their silent summer. And Origin had a fan meet zone where you could take pictures with Deficio and Xpeke. If you're wondering why none of the players showed up, you shouldn't be. I don't think I've seen Origin since spring.
The real series was our finals. After taking down Fnatic in a full 5 games, G2 qualified as Europe's first seed. But without the play-in stage to keep this team focused, I think we all know what's coming next. A classic G2 vacation. Well, that's got to put Ocelot on edge, considering his entire life savings are on the line.
Would you bet all your money right now on saying G2 becomes world champion? Yes. There you go.
I don't know if we heard that, but anyway, his entire life savings are on the line. Now, the prediction game ended with LEC taking first place as her rightful title as superior analyst. Now, throughout the split, we also invited guest analysts to make their own predictions. Tied in last place are Deficio and Ocelot. There's no joke here. I just thought that you should all know. Now, LEC, she's enjoying her victory in Korea this week, while Papa Smithy will be counting his days there, since 100 Thieves are literally robbing LCK of everyone's favorite Papa.
Back in the LEC on Friday, Splyce, who had disappointed many by getting 3-0'd in the first round of playoffs, and Origin, who had disappointed for the entire summer, faced off on Friday, and you guessed it, they both let us down again. You ever hear the phrase light at the end of the tunnel? Well, on Friday, there was just an extremely long tunnel, and it was pitch black. What about actions speak louder than 1,000 words? If that's the case, it was dead silent in the studio on Friday. It was like watching paint dry, but even that would be preferable to what we witnessed. Believe me, I could go all day, and the series felt like it could too. I don't know if we should blame the teams or the people that scheduled the games for Friday the 13th. Either way, it was just unlucky, and at the end of it all, Nuke Duck became Roast Duck.
Whew. Well, after being completely absent from Splyce's long series on Friday, everything turned around thanks to the exotic platter of snacks Splyce had backstage yesterday. Xerxes, he completely transformed through an entire character development arc. He went from being an innocent high school chemistry teacher to the one who knocks. And spoiler, Schalke fared far worse than Gus Fring did. Now Splyce, they just had a better trick up their sleeve. They found the upset win, and there was nothing O3 Duamne could do about it this time either.
Today is the final day of the regional qualifier and will determine which of these two teams will go into Worlds as second seed and who will get knocked out in play-ins. With Worlds just around the corner, many teams have decided to boot camp here in Europe this time around. Usually teams travel to Korea to have their egos shattered in scrims, but this year it seems pros would rather have their mental endurance tested by European solo queue. I just hope these teams are more resilient than some streamers.
Today also marks the end of the inaugural LEC season. We hope you enjoyed watching all the content we made as much as we enjoyed making it for you. From your stupid interview show,
to your stupid interview show,
to Medivedi,
to Drake and Dur,
to Quick Stats,
to Medivedi,
to LEC Safari,
to more Medivedi,
to the mediocre rap battles,
to Medivedi,
to Okay, that's enough. For LEC Update, I'm Ify de Portere.
And I'm Christy Frierson. Seriously. To the final day of the LEC 2019 season.
Splyce, they finally made it back to Worlds, but their biggest challenge still remains, a fight with Fnatic for Europe's second seed. Hello everyone, I'm Sjokz, joined by Frosk and YamatoCannon. Are we feeling a little emotional that it is the last day of the LEC's inaugural season?
It's crazy how time flies. It feels like yesterday LEC rebranded and this entire year has been just a massive success. It's amazing that it's coming to an end today.
In America, usually in school on like the last day, right before summer vacation, you have this big thing. We like throw everything up in the air and everyone's like going wild. And it does kind of feel like the last day before summer vacation.
It is true, but not everything is done yet. And of course, yesterday, Splyce made it to Worlds for the first time since 2016, as they defied expectations by sweeping Schalke 0-4. I say defy expectations because after Friday's showing and Splyce's poor showing, even in a win, Frost, we didn't expect them to be this good versus Schalke.
Yeah, I felt like the recency bias that people saw Splyce versus Origin and they were ready to just count Splyce out. But again, if you cast your mind back only 4 weeks, it was Splyce that was toe-to-toe with Fnatic, who they'll get another shot at today of who was actually going to take that second seed for regular split and go directly to Athens. They were denied then, they can get their revenge here and force Fnatic into play-ins or find themselves in that.
This is the best form I've seen Splyce all year in, because they had these glimpses of hope and glimpses of brilliance throughout the split, but never consistently game after game. They had this 3 in a row, and I think it spells for a good future for Splyce.
I hope so, and I hope they can find that consistency when they go into Worlds. Final notes on Schalke 04. Such a heartbreaker again. Last year falling at the last hurdle before Worlds, and now again they don't make it. Upset still can't be at Worlds, but in the end it wasn't enough once again, Yamato.
I think it's crazy to think that they ended the season with a 0-6 lose streak. That must hurt and must be very painful at the time. But the off-season is a time for reflection and to learn. They've been in the same situation twice now. I'm expecting Schalke to come back even stronger next year.
We will see tonight Fnatic and Splyce. 2 EU Worlds representatives will face off in that best-of-5 for seeding going into Worlds. And so far, 22 teams have secured a spot at World 2019 in Europe. A lot of names, a lot of regions represented, so I wanted to take the time to pick out a couple. So I'm going to ask you first, Frost, who are we looking at from the LPL?
What is this report card that I'm looking at right now?
And why is LCK on top?
I know, right? Biased? I mean, for the LPL representatives, you have Royal Never Give Up, RNG, as well as Invictus Gaming. I don't think they need any introduction. I think people are pretty clued into who you're going to watch on that. So I do want to focus a bit more on FPX, or Fun Plus Phoenix. This is a team that has been denied international recognition for a while, simply because they couldn't get to the international stage. It was kind of the running joke that they go into playoffs and Doinby's team absolutely collapses. So to finally get to see him make a debut at Worlds, he's been around the LPL for a very long time. Korean streamer turned LPL pro, never played in the LCK, so he is 100% LPL despite hailing from Korea.
I think what's crazy about the Chinese teams that they brought to the table here is that I feel like they're so meta-dependent. In the right place, RNG, if it's all of a sudden this bot lane-centric meta, they can look very deadly. IG, with their solo laners, can look very deadly. FPX, if they have this style that works with the crazy picks on Doinby, if they don't get figured out throughout the tournament, they can look super, super deadly. So I'm excited to watch LPL and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, just get people hyped for Doinby and FPX, those crazy picks. Maokai mid, Nautilus mid, Quinn mid, also plays the Pantheon mid that he showed at Rift Rivals.
The new one, maybe?
I'm sure he'll pull it out, but that's just something to kind of whet your appetite when you look at Doinby in the future.
World Champion 2019 coming from the LPL?
No.
All right, well, we'll see. Maybe they come from the LCK. Of course, there was a big shock last year at Worlds when the LCK collapsed completely. And what we've got now is a playing field of the old guard of SKT returning with some new blood, but also 2 teams completely full of new players on the world stage. What do you think of SKT?
I think there was an issue of kind of separating the LCK mystique and power from the SKT legend.
Yeah.
And now that SKT kind of back in form, back on top, and back at the world stage, LCK fans can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. You feel that when SKT is there, even if they don't win, you have confidence that they're at least going to make top 4. So I think having them back there, especially flanked by the likes of Teddy and Clid, SKT are definitely a team to watch out for.
I think what's amazing about Korea is the fact that they're sending 2 very, very young teams. The struggle for Korea has always been that they've always played the slow style. And I feel like these younger teams in Griffin and Damwon can adapt to the play style that LPL has been winning it. We had the MSI, we had the World Championship, very, very fast pace. I feel like the Korean teams can adapt.
What are the expectations for Damwon?
I think there's two different types of lenses. I think Damwon is by far the scariest third seed, and so any group that they end in automatically, I think, becomes the group of death, but we'll see kind of how it shakes out. But it's this idea of tempering expectations. Yes, you have Griffin and Damwon who play a much more explosive style than you're used to seeing. Yes, you have all of this new blood, so it could lead to very exciting things, but it's also how will they fare on such a big stage? We've seen Griffin repeatedly in best of fives struggle to really perform up to fans' expectations. And I think that kind of needs to be looked at for this new breed of LCK talent. On an international stage, are they going to perform to the same level that you expect them to domestically, or are you going to have some of these growing pains?
Yeah, those question marks were definitely there for Griffin, even within the LCK this year. Yamato, if you look at the whole playing field, how open does this World Championship feel?
I think it's super, super open. It's so hard to doubt anyone because we have the former World Championship winners in IG. We don't know what form they're going to come in. The entire LPL is a big question mark. Korea as well. I don't think we've seen FLICKR in his true form just yet. We've seen Khan stumble. We've seen Mata stumble. Teddy and Clid.
Yep there, buddy. How you doing over here? Hey, I'm coming from Lone Star State for y'all. Howdy, partners. How y'all doing here? I'm here to tell y'all about Clutch Gaming. It's their first rodeo coming over to the world stage here, but I got to tell you something, folks. They got new blood. They got old blood. They got ABO type blood. They've got it all here. And old Betty, she knows it too. Here, Clutch Gaming from Lone Star State. You don't want to forget about them. Now, let me start things off here. I want to tell y'all about Huni in the top lane. Some of y'all might remember him about, playing with Fnatic over in the glory days of Europe. Well, let me tell you, Huni, he's like a box of chocolates. You got EU Huni. You got NA Huni. You got KR Huni. You got NA version 2 Huni. Seems a little bit like NA version 1 Huni as well. Sometimes he's just going to pick the Lucian, and there's nothing you can do about it. But let me tell all you folks, they are coming here to Worlds, and they are coming to take it all because they know the strategy. They go for the Rift Herald every single game, folks. Let me tell you, 10 minutes on the clock. That bot lane's going to be recalling. They're going to be running straight up towards the top side. They are going to want that objective, and there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot stop those folks. But there is one thing that no one can see coming in. There's nothing you can do about it neither. We got Tanner DeMonte in the mid lane. This man, it's Tanner time, folks. It's Tanner time. You put him on the Kiana. You put him on Assassin. He's going to carry the game. There's absolutely nothing that y'all can do about this. It is Tanner time, and you don't want to mess with Texas.
After that, I don't think I want to mess with Texas. Yeah, well, how do you follow that? Well, it might be Tanner time, but it's also Worlds time. And 2019, that could be the year that it's coming home as EU look to improve on the success from Worlds in Korea. In our look backs at the previous World Championships, today we've landed on 2018. Worlds was held in Busan, Gwangju, and Seoul, and its results would shock the world. Now, EU, they had high hopes for champions Fnatic, but powerhouses KT Rolster and LPL's RNG were the favorite for the championship. But as we know now, nothing would work out as planned. Let's start with Europe's second seed team Vitality, seated in a group of death with RNG, Gen.G, and Cloud9. The tournament really seemed over before it began for the rookies, but Vitality shocked everyone by beating Gen.G and RNG, but sadly losing their quarterfinal spot by falling to Cloud9. Still, their performance and the speech coach YamatoCannon delivered at their exit from the tournament inspired teams and players alike for years to come. Now, not in the least, G2 Esports. G2 really limped into Worlds after a lackluster year, and after their previous Worlds performances, surely no one expected them to make a deep run in Korea. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. G2, they not only made it to quarterfinals, but completed the biggest upset ever seen in professional League of Legends by knocking out Uzi and RNG in a Game 5 where Perks' LeBlanc ran rampant over the Rift. Now, in the semi-final, IG put an end to the fairy tale, but Fnatic, they would pick up the slack. Caps and Fnatic made an epic run to the finals, first beating IG twice at the end of the group stage to lock first seed, swiftly setting aside LPL's EDG in the quarterfinals, and embarrassing Cloud9 in the semis. Now, after 2015, Fnatic and European fans alike believed once again that the impossible could be possible, and Europe could bring home a Summoners Cup. Unfortunately for Reckless and the team, they did not live up to the huge expectations during the final, and IG and Rookie deservedly lifted the Summoners Cup. However, 2018 will live on as one of the best, if not the best year Europe has ever had at Worlds, and it reignited the hope of us once again lifting the trophy. Now, in the words of YamatoCannon, play your style. And that is exactly what Europe did last year. Let's hope that the meta suits us again in 2019.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. Now, 2018 was the perfect meta for Europe, and I wanted to take a look at what would be the best for our teams going into Worlds 2019. Before we do that, we got to look back at the 2018 meta. As you can see, Aatrox, Urgot, Alistar, Irelia, Akali. I'm sure you all remember these very big, very powerful picks that helped take the likes of Fnatic and G2 all the way to the semifinals. There was a lot of flexibility in these drafts, given that so many of these champions could be flexed between mid and top. And the engaged supports were also very important to act as that teamfight initiation later. But the main goal of these comps was to basically play around your mid lane, play around your top lane, get your two solo laners ahead, so they can enable plays like this. We all remember Perk's fantastic LeBlanc performance from their Game 5 against RNG. And when you enabled your solo laners, back then, it was the perfect meta to allow them to run away with the game. Now, ADs were similar to what they are now, with Xayah and Kai'Sa being the predominant carries. However, you would rarely play around your bot lane. They were your late game insurance. On the current patch, things aren't that different, but there are a couple of differences, namely in some of the champions. You'll see Sylas is a lot more popular on the current patch. We see things like Karma and Rakan rising up a lot more in priority. Aatrox and Akali still very prevalent on the current patch, but while the pool of flex champions has definitely gotten smaller, there's still an emphasis on providing flexibility in your draft to allow adaptation in your draft and granting yourself a strong early game presence. However, there is slightly less emphasis on trying to get your solo laners ahead compared to Worlds in Europe. Now, you can play a lot more through your bot lane and rely a lot more on those engaged supports. Now, in an ideal world, Europe would like the meta to stay where it is. Fnatic and G2 are both great at securing their team's early game advantages and snowballing off the back of them. The worst thing that could happen is that these flex picks get nerfed to a point where flexing becomes less reliable in draft and we pivot to a more scaling and teamfight meta. Now, that's not to say that our teams couldn't play a teamfight meta, but that's not where they've evolved to at the end of the season and could cause them problems against the likes of teams such as RNG and SKT, who are renowned for their incredible teamfighting thanks to their top-tier AD carries in Uzi and Teddy. This then, of course, could create some worries, as both Akali and Aatrox are getting quite hard nerfed on patch 9.18. Worlds will, of course, be on patch 9.19, so the big question I have is, do we have faith that Europe will find new picks to make the meta fit to their style, or do we think they'll conform? Back to you, Sjokz.
Thank you very much, Vedius. Well, it's an interesting conundrum, because does the meta dictate if there's flex teams or not, or is it the flex teams that dictate if there will be a meta with flex picks? Because I think when you look at teams that utilize them, it doesn't matter if some of them get nerfed. The strength of them is that they can find other picks that other teams wouldn't think about and bring them in their own meta, but it's of course not. It's easier said than done.
I'm with you. Like, I think for sure it's easier said than done, but it's something that G2 has done over and over again. We saw the Pyke in every lane. I'm sure they can find something exotic that we haven't thought about yet. And all of a sudden it becomes a terror in all of our solo queue games.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's so much that happens behind the scene in terms of scrims. And it's kind of like, there was a portion in EU even this year where Ryze disappeared. He was like super high priority, and then he disappeared for, I think, a week and a half, and then he suddenly shot back up. And the thing is that you never know what happens in scrims, how schedules change, but teams can get it in their head that a champion just will not work because they run it in scrims and they just get shut down every single time by either a certain pick or a certain team. And so you kind of have to put together those clues through the draft and how a tournament meta evolves.
Yeah, it would be very interesting. Also, what will be interesting is to see how the meta evolves in this best of 5, because tonight we watched 2 of EU's representatives for Worlds on the Rift as Fnatic and Splyce fight for our 2nd seed and a spot directly into the group stage. The loser today has to go in the play-in stage, and depending on who you ask, that's a good thing or a bad thing for us.
So there's 2 ways to look at this. Either you get some warm-up, you get nice momentum, you get extra time to figure out the meta, get your scrim time in, like shake off all of the stage nerves, or you end up in a group of death because you're suddenly coming in as a 3rd seed and you just get blasted by having 2 number 2 seeds and a number 1 seed that looks crazy stacked.
I think in the case of Splyce, they have a lot of players that have never been to the World Championship. I remember experiencing the first time with the Splyce boys when we went to the World Championship. It really came to life the moment we entered that arena for the first time. The fact that they get to experience that World's experience so early on get to play a bit more loose matches, get into the groove of being at the World Championship, I think that can be very positive for them.
It could be.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Then also don't want to lose this best of 5, of course. So it's you know, it's a hard one to choose, and I think both teams definitely are coming in here wanting to win. Now let's talk about Fnatic. They are coming off 10 games versus G2, and if we toss kind of the heartbreak aside, which was no doubt monumental for these guys, they did show a fantastic level in those best of 5s, more than I expected from them after the regular season.
I mean, I don't know. In terms of development, I think we both want to just jump in and be like, yeah, Fnatic are really good right now. It was kind of like you saw them sign off in regular split. Again, it was kind of neck and neck across from Splyce. People were like, who really wins? Like, people were tempering on Fnatic, but not 100%. After watching them do blow for blow with G2 10 times, everyone's like, nope, Fnatic and G2. That is a massive gap between everyone else. These guys are true contenders.
I think it's absolutely crazy how much Fnatic managed to grow and improve in between the weeks and also coming into the first best of 5 that they played against G2. But on the other hand, playing a finals is very exhausting. The last time we saw Schalke play a final last year, and then they had to play the gauntlet, we saw that kind of burnt into their play and exhausted their play. So that also is something that I keep in mind coming into this one.
Yeah, I think that works for both teams. The Fnatic that's come off those 2 heavy weeks, and then Splyce who's not playing their 3rd best of 5 in a row. And for Splyce, they failed in the playoffs, of course famously went out versus Rogue, but then had success in the gauntlet. But I do want to focus in on that massive change we saw between their match versus Origin and their match versus Schalke 04, because I did not want the Friday Splyce to go to Worlds. This Splyce I can get excited about.
Yeah, and it is nice to kind of see Splyce, again, make that same type of development or growth over the course of the best of 5 that we've seen at them. The only issue is, and the question that will be answered is, did they grow to the same extent that Fnatic did? Because we talked about how Fnatic are leaps and bounds, heads and shoulders better than what we saw in regular split when they came into best of 5. And I can't really say the same thing about Splyce. It is nice to see Xerxes really pop off yesterday, but do I feel that he is significantly better than the pop-off moments that I saw in regular split? And I would say no. Splyce look good, but they don't look forever changed.
Well, talk to me about some of the matchups. I'm looking at the bottom lane, Reckless versus Kobbe, 2 of kind of icons in their own teams respectively, now back at Worlds, and this will be a good test to see how they do up against each other in the best of 5.
For sure, Reckless is a very, very scary individual to come up against, because you always have this conversation of who's going to take over, who's going to run up against him, who's going to take his spot as that resident AD carry, the face of the European AD carries, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, because Reckless showed impeccable form. And I want to give a kind of flashback to the last time they played the best of 5 against each other. The only time Splyce won was when they actually managed to get out of the lane phase with a lane swap. Kobbe got ahead, gathered Tristana, and all of a sudden he was carrying the game. So the potential is there if they can avoid that lane phase somehow.
I also think it's really important to kind of underline the responsibility that Reckless and Kobbe play for their teams respectively. Yeah, they play the same position, but Kobbe is like the insurance policy for Splyce. We always joke about, you know, Splyce time 35 minutes, and that tends to be when the AD carry really comes online, that they can just funnel resources into him. He's been the guy in clutch moments that he will plant his feet and say, no, I have the experience, I can perform in these intense situations. Whereas Reckless, Fnatic don't need Reckless to win. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not just as important, but it's a very different importance. It doesn't have to be 35 minutes late game insurance policy ADC. He can sit there on Garen and soak up for the Yuumi. He can be on the things like Karma and allow Hilly to roam around. Reckless is so good at playing weak side.
I think that just speaks leaps and bounds about the other players on Fnatic. I'm looking at Hilly Sang, someone that we didn't speak about. When he's on those clutch picks, is crazy. Broxah, MVP performance in the best of 5 against Schalke was absolutely magnificent too.
Yeah, speaking about Broxah for tonight, for more rather, on tonight's series, let's hear from Fnatic's jungler.
Hey everybody, I'm joined by Broxah ahead of his series against Splyce a little later today. Before we talk about that, I have to ask about World Championships. A few weeks ago on PGL, Reckless had some strong words about the mentality around Fnatic going into the World Championship finals, and he kind of felt that the team maybe wasn't hungry enough to win it. I've seen how you guys played against G2. We know you're going to be in World Championship. So what is Fnatic's mood like going into it?
Our mood right now is pretty mixed. After Athens, all of us, obviously, we're happy that we secured the spot at Worlds, but at the same time, at least for me personally speaking, everything was kind of being overshadowed by the loss, and there was a really devastating feeling being so close to actually winning and then not making it the entire way. And yeah, like we're a team of winners in the sense that we're all here to win. None of us can accept losing. We want to go all the way. And now it really sucks that we didn't manage to take the trophy in Athens, but at the same time, we're all really hungry now, and we're motivated to show that, you know, we're still here to play with the best, and we are still here to,
Show what you've got.
Show what we got. And
Well, look, you are definitely going to be playing with the best, either second or third seed in the World Championship. So how will Fnatic be preparing to bring the cup home for Europe?
I think our preparation is going to depend a bit on what happens today. I know our managers have different scenarios, really depending on whether we win or lose. And for me, I like to take it one step at a time. Really, I haven't thought too much about what happens after today. Obviously, we are all really hungry. We really want to win today, and we want to get the second seed because it's going to put us in a good position going into Worlds. But at the same time, what happens after is a bit of a question mark for me. I know we're going to get a bit of time off because we've all been grinding for so long now, and we're pretty tired. And just getting a little break before Worlds begins is going to be good for everyone, I think.
Well, I hope you enjoy your break. Let's talk about today's series. Splyce on Friday played one of the longest series we've had here in Europe. Splyce on Saturday crushed and surprised everybody. So depending which Splyce shows up, either way, you guys are the heavy favorites. What is going to be key to winning for Fnatic today?
I think the most important thing for us today is just to play our own game, really. I think we've showed the previous weeks that we're a really, really good team, and we should be able to contest with the best teams in the world as long as we play our own game, and we just, we just need to make sure we don't have a bad day, really, and that we don't underestimate Splyce. And yeah, as you said, Splyce looked really, really strong yesterday. After Friday, I'm not going to lie, I thought we were going to play Sjokz today, but Splyce needs to be respected. But I think as long as we just play our game, as long as we stick together and play the way we've done the previous weeks, we're going to be fine.
Best of luck in the games. I'm looking forward to casting.
Thank you.
Back to you guys at Ready Check.
Thank you very much. Broxah saying they are going to play their own game. When we look at the jungle matchup of Broxah versus Xerxes, what is Broxah playing his own game? How will he approach this matchup?
I think the key part here for Broxah is that he has 3 key champions he likes to play, especially this season. He liked the Elise, he liked the Lee Sin and the Gragas, and I think that's maybe where Xerxes can find a way in. We saw the Olaf yesterday, maybe some counter picks, because Xerxes is going to be so key for Splyce's early game.
Kind of the sentiment for regular split was that this is brain versus brawn. You know, we talk about how Xerxes is the pathing guy. He's all about control. He can download you and dissect you and then hopefully defeat you, whereas Broxah likes to sacrifice his own jungle camps for brute forcing ganks for his laners, which when you have guys like Reckless, Nemesis, and Bwipo, that can really pay off if you start snowballing them ahead. And he's kind of the key core of a lot of Fnatic's early game power does start with them. So it's definitely a different clash of styles, and it's really who gets to execute on the day. Does Xerxes get to control, read, slow down Broxah and help Splyce get to a position where they actually get to team fight, or does Broxah just brute force through Xerxes and tear everything up?
Yeah, we'll see. The last individual I do also want to focus on is Humanoid. For me, he's been a bit hot and cold. He's definitely been very good this split, but he's not always shown his full potential. Now, for me, he really stepped up yesterday for Splyce.
I remember the specific game against Humanoid where it really, really showed off what Qiyana could do. Qiyana was a new champion at the time, and they beat Fnatic in a very, very dominant fashion on that Qiyana pick. Yesterday, we saw a champion that was banned all 5 games in the Origin series, Akali, and he popped off big time. I think Akali and Qiyana, 2 champions, are going to be heavily contested, and I will be surprised if Humanoid gets his hand on any of them.
Well, let's talk about the contested picks going into this best of 5 and the key champions, because we've certainly seen enough for both Fnatic and Splyce over the last couple of weeks to make a prediction.
Yeah, the issue is that everyone knows. It's super telegraphed. Like, you know what Fnatic's probably going to play, you know what Splyce are going to play, but I still feel that for all the criticism that Fnatic had levied at their champion pools, that they're still more flexible in this situation. The fact that Aatrox fell through yesterday's series, that Gangplank was given away every single time. So we know that Bwipo is confident to play either side of that matchup, as well as Nemesis' comfort to play either side of the Sylas Akali matchup.
I think it's absolutely crazy as well that Rakan was untouched. Rakan, to me, is one of the best champions in the game, and it feels crazy that on top of Aatrox, like, you need to ban 3. Aatrox, TF, Yuumi, there's so many champions that Splyce doesn't want to play. What's going to happen in draft? They're going to let something through. We're going to see some Fnatic magic.
That is what I was going to say, because we talked so much in the last 2 days about how big of a difference there is between the top 2 in G2 and Fnatic and the rest of the league, meaning Fnatic does not have to adapt to your mini meta you've created over the last 3 days. They're just going to play what works for them and their strong early game. Do you think that is why Fnatic is big favorites here?
I don't feel like this series is going to be about adaptation. I think it's going to be about survival. Can Splyce survive the first few rounds with Fnatic? Are they tired from their brawl with G2?
I think this is going to be crazy because there's just too many things to ban. And all of these champions are super, super powerful. And I think it's going to be an absolute brawl.
It's going to be a brawl. I can't wait. Tonight, it is a historic occasion as two of Europe's world's representatives close out the first LEC season. It's been one hell of a ride. Let's see what's in store for our final day.